Are you looking for hot takes and guests yelling over top of each other? Well, you came to the wrong place. This is the final word where we talk about sports like they used to. All opinions are welcome, but that doesn't mean you are right. Hosted by Greg Rector. Welcome in.
Welcome to the final word. And this is Greg Rector at Greg Cowboys, Team MBS Draft Central and TeamMBSmedia.com. And this evening, I'm joined by Rudy Reyes. How are you tonight, Rudy?
I'm doing good, Greg. Thanks for having me on. I certainly appreciate it. It's been a while.
Well, yes, and this is my first opportunity to have you alone. So this is a great opportunity for myself.
Well, I appreciate that.
Absolutely right. And because this is the final word, we want to start off with a little bit of music.
Why not? I love music.
I know you do.
I'm a huge guy.
And there's a particular drummer in mind that I have in my mind here, because of course when you deal with all these rock and roll guys and all their columns, they always say John Bonham was the best drummer of all time. Well, John Bonham played in an era where it was, heavy music, blah blah blah. But I think there's a different drummer that I have in mind who is the best of all time. Would you know his name?
You know what? That's a great question. I'm going to add another drummer to that list who might be as good as John Bonham, as great as John Bonham was, and I take nothing away from his extraordinary Bonzo Montreux and his ability to pull in a crowd, and and that's great and wonderful. His son actually is quite good, that still isn't the name that I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of maybe nickname as the Professor. Maybe if anybody happens to know who that is, I don't know. I'm not a professor.
No, I'm not either. But the Professor, of course, is Neil Peart.
The man, the myth, the legend, the guy who knows how to switch like he can do it in his sleep. It's a switch on the wall. He can turn it on and off. A guy who had to relearn how to play the drums.
Yes.
In order to maximize his beats.
Yep.
One of the first, if not the only, drummer to ever facilitate such melodic fills, some of the best in the world for that matter, and so great in the progressive rock scene. And I just happen to own almost everything from Rush.
And we continue to see things online on X and things like that, and forward them to each other and all that great sort of stuff. The one song that was the toughest song for Neil Peart to play, which one was that?
I think it's all of them.
Well, yeah,
it's a level.
He did say before he passed away that Tom Sawyer was the hardest song that he had to play.
Yes, I believe his fills and combos weren't the highlight of that song. I believe what made that song very difficult, and of course I've heard that song probably a billion times, in that he used extraordinary crossovers. His ability to hit the cymbals, the drum of choice being the snare, which is by far the most dynamic piece in a kit, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And his ability and he didn't rely so much on the double drum foot bass thing. He relied solely on creativity with the kit he had.
Yeah.
And he will always go down as the man, the one who La Via Strangiato, you can you can add
XYZ, and I mean Red Barchetta. There's so many great songs that Peart not only played on, but he wrote the lyrics to.
Correct, absolutely. And unfortunately, due to his untimely passing, Not that he wasn't dealing with arthritis and arthritic feelings in his hands and obviously in his feet and his knees and such. And we know that arthritis affects everything, well, at all times. He still managed to pull off shows, and he did it so well, you could never tell that he was ever in pain. The guy,
not even that last concert. You couldn't tell that he was dealing with everything that he was going through.
No,
you had no idea, and it was just phenomenal. Absolutely.
When I went to Fremont, California, and watched Rush in the Test for Echo tour, I had some pretty good seats, I must say. They weren't great, but they weren't bad. We're in the nosebleed sector. I was like right in the middle. If you ever been to Fremont, California,
yeah, I have been.
That venue. A very nice venue. The audio was incredible, but you could never tell, even though he was dealing with that then. The fact that the drum kit went up in the air, and while he was playing it, and he did it so effortlessly, it blew my mind. I'd never seen anything like that in my life, and I will always remember it because, as you know, when you go to every concert, everybody's blasting the latest Rush tune. I wasn't playing the latest and the greatest. I was playing YYZ. I had like a hodgepodge of, Hold Your Fire, Power Windows, 2112, one of my favorite albums. I could listen to that thing backwards and frontwards, and I know every lyric, every song on that album. But such a great experience for me. And of course, I miss Neil on a regular basis, like I would Kobe Bryant or people that have gone on too soon.
And unfortunately, both of those guys passed away in the month of January, which was
correct. That's exactly right. And I remember.
So we have similar feelings on those 2 days.
Yeah, very, very much so. I've always had a matter of fact, to tell a short story, I wanted to learn how to play percussion, and I said, you know what? I wonder who I can find that would teach me the way that Neil Peart had taught them to play. And that's almost impossible to do. You could not facilitate, someone may say they play like Neil Peart, and you're like, okay, doubtful, but okay. I'll give you the listen. You tell me, just based on what
Dave Grohl at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, when they did their bit before Rush took over, Dave Grohl did a pretty decent job, but again, he's even said no one can touch Neil Peart. Nobody.
No. But I'm going to touch on this for half a second. Dave Grohl, in his infinite wisdom, and his band that he's currently a part of, I hate to say this, sorry Dave if you're listening, but they do not belong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame yet. It took Rush over 30 years to even be considered and to be put on the ballot, getting them into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So,
I mean, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has always been this stupid idea anyway, because the Rolling Stone magazine guys who hated progressive rock like Rush, they despised bands like that. So of course they were going to make them wait. Just the same things they did to the Go-Go's. The Go-Go's deserved to be in there long before they got in. And again, if you want to talk about a great rhythm section, it's Kathy Valentine and Gina Shock who were the real part of the Go-Go's that were fantastic. They were phenomenal.
Yes, very much so. Very much so.
And that's why I always get PO'd when it's the lead singer and the guitarist that get the attention. And I'm really?
Well, look at who else just barely got in and put on the ballot. Pat Benatar.
Yeah.
Pat Benatar.
8 octaves. The woman could sing into 8 different octaves.
I was listening to her story about how she married her guitarist, how she met her guitarist and all of that. And that was great. That's on the big interview. which they do a fabulous job over at ATS. However, when I listened to that, I was so just like drawn in, thinking to myself, how did it take this long? Why
Yeah.
did it take this long? Why did it
Because
take
Pat
years so much?
Pat Benatar got to such a huge level in the 1980s
Right,
that she didn't want to go out and tour anymore.
right,
There was also this attitude that she had towards the music industry, much like the Hart sisters ended up writing about with Barracuda and all that sort of stuff.
mhm,
She was sick and tired of the sexual harassment that she was receiving from others and all that other jazz.
right,
So of
right,
course they put the kibosh onto Pat Benatar, which is
right.
totally ridiculous. It's totally ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't know why good bands get let in last. I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't care for it. I'm not a fan of the in iniquities
Yeah,
involved in the decision making process, and I think there's really a lack of still very solid talent who should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It took the Beach Boys a long time to get in, but
yeah.
you know they're in.
And I watched on YouTube earlier today a thing about Brian Wilson.
Mhm.
And when you go over Pet Sounds, how Capitol Records never pushed that album was ridiculous. It was so stupid.
Well, you could have the same conversation about the Beatles. I mean, how many hit singles did they have that were never accepted?
Yep, yep,
That were always thrown back, saying, "No, you know what? It's too soft. They're not going to groove. They're not going to move. They're just, they're not going to like it." And here we are. Fast forward from the early, 60s, right? When the Beatles were just hitting clubs and pubs and, small venues. And they're more celebrated, having 50% of them passed on already, including John Lennon, the
yeah.
great songwriter, and George Harrison. Uh, but
Who to me is the best songwriter of the whole bunch. George has got the best songs, especially on the later albums.
right.
And then I said to you the other day, 33 and a Third is my favorite Harrison solo album. I just love that album.
That is fabulous. Yeah. I've always been a fan of great songwriting. When
Yeah,
you mix songwriting, just like and John Lennon and Paul McCartney can attest to this, when you make good songwriting, you have to have a great set of orchestration behind it, melodics,
yeah.
different types of instrumentation. The Beatles used things like the pizzicato. They used a harp. They used pipe organs. They
But
used
Paul McCartney got that idea from? Who did he get the idea from? The late
well,
great, the late great Buddy Holly, who
right,
had the orchestra come in and
right.
he used the orchestra on those hits that he had in the 50s. And
But
that's where
think about the influence, though.
McCartney then took it to a different level with the type of instruments that they used.
Correct, but add to the fact that they were really into Pet Sounds, as you
Oh yeah.
well stated. When Paul McCartney heard Pet Sounds, he told John, "This is what we need to be doing. These are the types of things that we need to do." Now, they were as enamored with the Beach Boys as Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys were enamored with them. They just didn't know it. And it's surprising that
Exactly.
you can hear a collaborative effort between the two bands making some. I mean, it would have been so super just mind blowing if they had ever.
I think Brian Wilson would have been open to it. The rest of the Beach Boys, especially Mike Love, would not have said yes to that.
No,
No,
Mike
no,
Love,
no.
no, Mike
Yeah,
Love all day would have denied it like Judas did Jesus.
yeah.
There's no, there's no way around.
There's no way around that one.
No,
And of course, that's the great thing about the music though, is that it has lived on for as long as it has.
it's as transcendent as sports is.
Yep, yep. And again, I'm a 60-year-old man now, so I've reached that 60 mark, and
Wow.
I tell the younger generation who have only seen things on social media, you know, uh, like I sent out a tweet the other night to Joe, the boss man here, and to Ryan Cooley's Steaks. It was a picture of John Riggins in the Super Bowl against Miami when he had 161 yards on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And above that picture, I said, this man was a beast long before there was Marshawn.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, yes, his nickname was the Diesel and all this other, but he was a beast of a running back. And
Yep.
What more do you need to understand than that? But yet the guy played the game in the early 1980s, you know?
We can go back even further where you have dual threats, triple threat, guys who just cemented.
Paul Hornung for the Green Bay Packers. I mean,
Yep.
Paul Hornung, who was a triple threat. He was a triple threat player at Notre Dame on a 2-8 team, and he won the Heisman Award
because he was that good. Same thing. You can have a conversation about Travis Hunter. The guy could do it all, and when you can do it all, you become it all, and you end up at the higher level being able to get it done at that level.
Oh yeah, absolutely correct. So tonight we're gonna discuss the All-Star Awards for the National Football League.
There's a lot of awards, Greg. You have assistant coaches, you have Defensive Player of the Year, Rookie of the Year, and Coach of the Year.
I know. And we're going to start out with the NFL Assistant Coach of the 2024 season. How's that?
I can't think of a better place to start.
Well, we do have the Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator Joe Brady. We have Ben Johnson of the Detroit Lions, so the other OC. And then there's three defensive coaches: Vic Fangio of Philadelphia, Brian Flores of Minnesota, and Aaron Glenn, also of the Detroit Lions. So you tell me who you think would be the assistant coach of the year.
There's a lot. You have to peel this back like an onion quite a few times to get to the source of who these guys are, what they meant to their respective teams, and what they mean to their players. These are their players. Once you're a DC, once you're an OC, these are your players. These are your guys. So you have to be sure that from a mental standpoint, you have to make them ready and to be ready and ready at all times, because the opportunity could present itself and your number could be called because he's your guy. With that being said, Mike Flores is a very good example of a head coach that was not meant to be. And I don't say that as a slight to Flores in any way, shape, or form. He was with the Steelers as a defensive consultant, did great work there in Pittsburgh. Goes over to Vikings defense in the following year that helped them gain kind of momentum that you haven't seen since the Purple People Eaters back in the 70s. So a lot to like about Mike Flores.
Brian Flores.
Brian Flores, excuse me. So Brian, a guy who basically said, you know what, we're going to turn into the defensive juggernaut that we used to be. And I guarantee you, he went back, looked at the film, seen what they used to do back then, and said, you know what, I got this. I know what I have to do. And he did it. He did it very well. He led the Vikings to forced fumbles, 21 of them, in fact, the most since 2007. And they improved from dead near last in the NFL in 2022 to 16th in 2023. So that says a lot about the progression, the mindset, and the demeanor that Brian Flores has brought to this Minnesota Vikings team. Now, interestingly enough, he has done so much with every single person on that line, and I take nothing away from his accomplishment. However, he wasn't part of a head coaching cycle. And whether or not he stays put in Minnesota, that remains to be seen. I'd like to think that he will, but, it's the NFC. It's not like the AFC where people are floating around and I know a guy, or, you have to be likable. As a coach, as you know, Greg, you have to be likable. You have to be near lovable. And you have to be able to be coachable, meaning that you have people that are in equivalent positions that want to see you succeed. And I believe that at every single level, head coach, assistant coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, line coach, position coach, whatever that is, you have to be able to be coachable within that respective role so you can grow and in turn help your guys do the very same thing. So Brian Flores has done great things with the Minnesota Vikings. I believe he'll stay. I don't know that for a fact, but the rumor mill has it that he will end up staying in Minnesota, at least for now. Of course, that could obviously change. If there is a guy that I think will be missed the most and I'm talking about the NFC, we'll stay in the NFC, I think it's going to be Aaron Glenn. And I say that so with a heavy heart because he did so much with the Detroit Lions. He's had accomplishments left and right, not only as a player, but as a coach as well. He played for the Jets, the Texans, the Cowboys, and the Jaguars. And just a sidebar, anybody who's ever played in the National Football League and becomes a coach in the National Football League knows exactly what it takes. And he's certainly that guy. As a player, he recorded 661 tackles, 167 passes defended, 41 interceptions. And, oh, by the way, he studied under Sean Payton in New Orleans, having won a Super Bowl. So, again, one of those things where you look at him and think, okay, well, this is good, but where does he go? Well, he helped the Lions beat the Minnesota Vikings. That's a feather in his hat. It was a primetime game. If anyone remembers that one, that was a slugfest. I think it was week 16. And not only that, but he's part of the Bill Parcells tree, if you will, the tree that gives on that keeps on giving, the tree of football knowledge, and basically improve this team in so many different ways, mentally, positionally speaking, as well as just getting them where they need to go. So Aaron Glenn is basically gone, and I wish him the best. And that's going to leave a very gaping hole in the Lions defense. But I think the guy that's going to be missed the most is Aaron Glenn, because he helped this team do so many things and so many things well.
And let's not forget the number of actual players he actually had to use this year on that Detroit defense, because Hutchinson was out, Anzalone was gone for games, the secondary guys were gone, other defensive linemen were gone. I mean, what he did with a patchwork bunch of NFL bench guys was phenomenal.
Well, that's because he had the mindset. Again, going back to what I was saying earlier, these are his guys. He utilized them because he recognized their talents. If you're a coach and you're deeply and intrinsically involved in their growing up, if you will, inside of the National Football League, you have to know what their strengths are. You have to take those strengths and utilize them in the positions that you feel they're going to be most effective in. That is the bottom line to it. Yeah. He did a lot more with a lot less. And despite Hutchinson not being, a part of the secondary, or at least up front rather on the defense, he's just not a guy who knows how to lose with what he has. He knows how to win. And that's the best part about it. That's one of the reasons why he'll be more missed with the Lions. And of course, you'll see Hutch back. You'll see Anzalone. You'll see a few other guys that are out due to injury come back. But the question is who's going to lead them?
That's gonna be an interesting thing in Detroit as to the next leader of the defense, right? Ben Johnson, he had all the tools all year long except for David Montgomery for a few games, really, because their offensive line is so well put together, and they're all signed until 2027. They're all in place until 2027. They're loaded for the offensive line. Then you've got Montgomery and Gibbs in the backfield. You've got St. Brown, he was the wrong St. Brown to make it in the NFL, but okay, whatever. Jeff and I still just kill ourselves because Equiminius was a Notre Dame Fighting Irish player, and he was an excellent receiver in college, and we're going, but where is he? He's nowhere near the NFL now. It's just totally bizarre. But again, and they got Jameson Williams, and then the other kids that they picked, Josh Reynolds that they picked up, Sam Laporta, as the tight end. I mean, they're just basically set for life on offense.
They are really ready. One thing that Ben Johnson did so much is that, and he's learned through the ranks as well. Again, another guy, another system coach who came up to the ranks. He was originally a tight ends coach in 2020 after retained by Dan Campbell after he was named head coach in 2021. And then Matt Patricia, who was just absolutely horrible for this team in every sense of the word. So he was gone. He got promoted to pass game coordinator after Anthony Lynn went 0-8 in his play calling duty. So that was an epic fail right there. And then promoted again in February, just a couple years later, and now received a head coaching gig with the Chicago Bears, which they need him more than they think they need him. And in all fairness, and we've seen this time and time again by the Chicago Bears, is that they never got the head coaching situation right. Why? Because it's an organizational dumpster fire. It's a failure in all aspects, from front office through the middle and on to the bottom, including the ball boys. And sadly enough, when you look at this team, you think to yourself, what's going to go right? Well, they got the head coach right, but is it for the wrong organization? We're going to have to see what that holds for the Bears, and whether or not Ben Johnson can maximize Caleb Williams' potential. He did it with Jared Goff. He did it for the offense, and you know what? You're right, and that was actually a really good point. That was another point. Eric Bieniemy ended up being the running backs coach, just recently hired today by Chicago. I'm not a gigantic fan of Eric Bieniemy's play calling and play style and the personnel usage, but I mean, look, all I got to say is this: when you look at Cole Kmet, he is the most underrated, underused guy in the Bears tight end room. Okay. And if he can get to a Sam Laporta level, but they need an offensive line. And that's what the Bears have been just scratching their head on. How do we do this? What coach is going to get us in the right position? And again, I think they have the right coach. I just don't know if they're the right organization to acquire a guy like Ben Johnson, who is rumored to basically go, anywhere. The Raiders were calling for him. The Patriots were calling for him. I'm sure his ex-wife was calling. No, I don't know. But I mean, there's a variety.
There were many opportunities for Ben Johnson in this league, including a team that didn't bother even to contact the man, the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, all year long we heard because McCarthy was going to be gone. I knew McCarthy was not going to be getting rehired. I knew this.
No, because he wanted a 5-year deal, and that's not what Jerry Jones does. We know what Jerry Jones does because Jerry Jones does what Jerry Jones wants. And that whole press conference was a big, fat freaking sham because instead of allowing Schottenheimer to speak and do his own presser, who comes in to get all the glory, who wants to, have his
Jerry and Steven took all the glory, and they were taking shots at Schottenheimer. But at least Schottenheimer did say one thing during that press conference that was very important. It's about the players. Thank you, Jerry. Please understand, this is what Cowboys Nation really, really wants. They want to see 53 players who are dedicated to winning, getting back to the NFC Championship. Let's just say that, because, of course, it's now been 30 years without one, whereas in the first 36 years of the franchise, they went 14 times to an NFC Championship game. When you have that kind of level of incompetence as a general manager, the pain and agony that I go through.
I was there a couple of years ago, Greg, as you know, and one of the things that I was not a fan of, first of all, Dak Prescott, and I'll explain why in a minute. But I wasn't a fan of I don't know. I'm going to say this for the record. I just don't know that they can stay alive since 95. And I say that because this Schottenheimer hire was shoddy at best. They could have gone out of the organization. They could have put Ben Johnson in the best situation even humanly possible, better than the I don't know if it's better than the Bears organization, but at least you have an owner that kind of gives you a hands-off signal in Chicago, whereas Jerry Jones would be basically a cloud over Ben Johnson's head the entire time at training camp every single day. Who wants to deal with that? Who wants to deal with the hypocrisy? Who wants to deal with the headaches and the over-involvement from a general manager / owner that Jerry Jones is? And the interesting part about that is when he was on the field at training camp just a couple of years ago, when I was there, people, there's Jerry, so let's run over and get Jerry. Think to myself, yeah, okay, great, wonderful. I didn't really pay that a whole lot of attention. Should I have? Maybe.
No, you shouldn't have. You shouldn't have. And this is the thing that I have against the Dallas media is they all run to Jerry after a game. No, you talk to the head coach, you talk to the players. You don't need to speak to a general manager. A general manager has nothing to do with what happened in the game. That's it. I mean, it's so ridiculous. And then, of course, he has his own talk show on 105.3 The Fan there in Dallas.
Yes,
and he comes on and he spouts his spiels and all this other BS. And Steven goes along on there too. And, well, at the end of the day, it's going to be very hard for us to do anything with this salary cap. Oh, my Lord. Steven, no, it's not that difficult to do the salary cap. If you look at the team that's in the Super Bowl this week, from your own division, they had $63 million in dead money, yet they still signed the linebacker bond. They signed Barkley. It's how you actually use the money.
Yeah. Sadly enough, and to your point about Jerry Jones, I wasn't clamoring at Jerry Jones. I was kind of just at a safe distance because I didn't want to be part of the media scrum. And to be honest with you, I was more interested in talking to Andrew Whitworth and Brian Baldinger while they were there, and had a pretty decent conversation. There was, Micah Parsons on the sideline ready to go on NFL Network, and really nice guy. I told Micah, I said it was great to have met your dad because he was working with. He has his own endeavors, obviously, but it's for inner city kids, and he works on his own deal. And I brought that up to him. Saying, man, I'm all for it. I'm all in on it. So yeah, he helps his dad out whenever he can, and by showing up's always a great thing as well. But one thing I could say, I was more enamored talking to Micah Parsons than I would probably ever be speaking to Jerry Jones. Why? Because these guys know what's going on the field at every single snap, every single moment, with personnel, new personnel, older personnel. They get it. They totally get it. So and guys who have football knowledge, like Brian, he's played for 3 separate teams. Andrew Whitworth, who played for 2, separate teams. One took him to the Super Bowl, and the other team probably would have wished and prayed on a feather falling into their lap to ever get them to the Super Bowl. But there's a lot of things to like about. I'm going to say this as gently as I can about the Cowboys themselves, but I think this hire was very placated. I don't like the hire. They could have done better. They could have gone out on limb and get someone like Joe Brady. They could have gotten Ben Johnson. They could have easily spent the money, and you said it best. They could have spent the money that they had and did something more with it. But unfortunately, Jerry Jones is who he is, wants what he wants, and when Jerry wants, Jerry gets, and this is what he's going to get. And what's interestingly enough about this is that I guarantee you Ron Schottenheimer knows exactly what he's dealing with. This is not new to him. The difference is now he's the head coach. Mind you, he's had no head coaching experience whatsoever. So
he has not been interviewed for a head coaching gig in the NFL for over a decade.
Correct. So this stands to reason alone by itself why this is a failure more than it is a win. And I don't see them getting out of that 95 cloud. And you could probably book this because I'll have receipts. It's not going to take them to any glory land or an NFC championship game in the upcoming season either.
See, now if Jerry would lock up his kid in the closet like he did when the salary cap first came in 95 and they signed Dion, if you lock up Steven, get him away from the salary cap room, because he doesn't understand how the cap actually works. They should have Oso Odigizua, Jordan Lewis, and Micah Parsons all done before free agency even begins. And then you have money to spend on other free agents. Unlike the last year where Dak and CD both wait. Those deals were done months before. Months before they were done.
Well, interesting is that when I was there at Dallas Cowboys training camp, you've seen, Stephon Gilmore, who was, he had a 1-year tender. That was his deal. He played well. It's the system that you can either thrive in or you can decline in. And he was kind of at an impasse, like, well, I did my year. I don't see myself coming back. And he didn't. And he found himself another team. They went further, much further than the Cowboys did even that year. And they did it this year. So a lot to be said for guys who deserve to get the money when they need it and the right reasons behind why you would pay them a certain amount of money. Jerry Jones will wait till the last possible minute, and he's the kind of guy who wants to push it into the regular season before he signs.
And it's so ridiculous. It is so ridiculous.
It is bad business. It's bad business. In my opinion, it's very bad business because now all of a sudden they have incentive and your team is at 8-8. What? Your team's at 5-9? What? Why would you wait? Why would you wait? There's nothing to wait for. It's get it done and set the tone, set the morale, have a high one. You get your draft guys in and get on with it.
I mean, Micah was all ready to sign. Micah was ready to sign a new deal at the end of the season. He was ready to sign it.
Yep, he was.
I mean, they met each other at the Cotton Bowl.
Yep.
They were there right together.
Here's the paper. No rush. Let me know if you have any questions. There it is. End of story.
It's just so bizarre. Really, it is bizarre. And it pains me because, of course, I am the Cowboys writer and the fan of the Cowboys and all this other fun sort of stuff. But Steven and Jerry just drive me off the deep end. They do. They really do.
There are a lot more head scratchers going on. But again, this is a new year, a new time. Is it the same status quo business by the Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones and his son? I don't know. I don't know that it isn't either. There's, again, the jury's still out. I want to hear exactly what's going on, when it's going to go, and how it's going to drop, because they need to get guys signed and they need to do it now. And Micah Parsons is one of those guys.
Yeah, and Odigizua, I mean, if he goes to the free agent market, the Cowboys are not going to be able to compete with the dollars that man can sign for. They are not. No. Dan Quinn he's got $73 million in salary cap this year. Oso would be a Washington Commander like that.
Oh, easy. And stay in the division. How nice would that be?
Yeah. Just like Dorrance Armstrong and Dante Fowler were this year, and all these Tyler Biotish, who were all off in Washington, and they succeeded. I was pushing hard for Reyes Hale to win that game against the Eagles, because of course I wanted to see the rookie make a Super Bowl, and I did. I also predicted. I don't know. I predicted the Buffalo would beat Kansas City, but it just didn't happen. But I wanted the Washington Commanders to play the Buffalo Bills and repeat January the 26th, 1992. Washington beats Buffalo in that Super Bowl, and I wanted a repeat of that, but it's not going to happen.
It wasn't meant to be. I wanted the Commanders to win for one reason and one reason only, and that was Jaden Daniels. And I'm not saying that for the reasons that you might think I'm saying it. I'm saying it because if you watch any of my podcasts, any of the guys I've been on with, Jaden Daniels is from my hometown of San Bernardino, California.
Yep.
And he's a guy who I've never met, but the struggles and the issues and the things that he faced were very similar to the ones that I faced. All the trials and tribulations and adversities and things that he dealt with were not for the faint-hearted. They weren't the faint-hearted for anyone who's still living there, much less growing up in that demographic. So Jaden Daniels still gets props for me. he deserves a Rookie of the Year. We'll have that conversation as well. Whether or not he gets it is another story. But Jane Daniels is a guy who certainly is the competitor, a great person, and did exactly everything that he could possibly have done throughout the entire season in the National Football League and outshined every single rookie in the NFL.
Easily. And we will discuss the offensive rookie of the year shortly here. But for the assistant coach, who do you have as the winner?
It's tough because you still have Vic Fangio in the fold, and he's in the Super Bowl. This
ends at week 18 when the season's over.
Okay, all right. I had a feeling that was coming. I think Ben Johnson. I think the aforementioned Ben Johnson would be the one who's going to be missed the most. I really do feel that way because, he's done so much with that entire line. He's a quarterback guy. He gets the best out of the players that he works with. He's one of those juggernauts in the mindset of being able to get things done and getting what he needs from a front office. He's going to have his struggles with Chicago. I can guarantee you that. But for the most part, the draft is coming. I want to see what he unleashes, what he believes the needs are. I already know what the needs are. We'll talk about that later. But he's going to understand what this team needs specifically to get them to the next level. And I don't think it's even close in regards to who's going to be missed the most. Will probably be Ben Johnson, and in no specific order, and no slight to Vic Fangio because he's in postseason play, and I hate to say he doesn't count, but he kind of does. But then you look at the Bills and Joe Brady. You can't say enough great things about Joe Brady. I mean, he was the maestro over the Buffalo Bills. He helped Josh Allen have one of his best seasons in his career. Now 4 years out of Wyoming, go Pokes. He helped the Bills create a very strong rushing attack. He helped them with 30-plus points in 12 regular season games, which is the most in franchise history. So there's so much. I guess there should be more conversation about Joe Brady in regards to where he should go, where he needs to go, what team would be more beneficial for him. He's again one of those defensive geniuses that is kind of one in the kind. He's a one of a kind kind of guy, and I don't say that because he helped Josh be the best in his offensive line, but he's helped this team convert itself to the next level. Don't forget they lost some pieces.
Well, he took Josh Allen away from being the man had to do everything for the offense, and he got Josh Allen to understand there's a time to throw that ball out of bounds. There's a time for you to not run that football. James Cook had a great season as a running back. Mm-hmm. He used Kincaid well as his tight end. They did get Amari Cooper from Cleveland, and that helped the rest of their receiving core. But he basically took Josh Allen away from being the sole reason why the Bills were winning games, and that was Brady as the offensive coordinator last year when he came in and he changed that system. And this year, Josh Allen performed much, much better than we've ever seen him perform, period.
Don't forget, Josh Allen came from a Wyoming system where Coach Ball, whom I know well, said, do what you have to do. Well, he did what he had to do. And 9 times out of 10, Josh did what he had to do. And he had done it on a regular basis. That's not the same at the next level. And I think that Joe helped facilitate a better version of who Josh Allen is, unbeknownst to Josh Allen himself. And I think there's a lot predicated on Josh Allen by saying, well, is he going to rush that? Is he going to be the blocker, the willing blocker, and put himself in the line of fire? No, not necessarily. You have another back set, you can have that guy block him. You don't have to do everything on every single down at every single moment in the game. and even situationally, you want to give that to James Cook, or you want to try to throw that to Kincaid, or use what you have. And that's one of the things that Joe Brady did, is that he brought in, same with what has been done with other teams, by knowing your personnel. We talked about the Lions DC and what he did with a lot less.
Yeah.
And same conversation you could have with Joe Brady and what he did with what he had. He knew his strengths, he knew his weaknesses on the offensive line, wide receivers, slot wide, whatever, your tight end bunch formations, your offset line. He knew what he had, and he utilized it and maximized every single piece of personnel grouping on that field, whether they were dealing with injuries by Thune or anyone else. So he had one of his best seasons in the National Football League overall.
Yeah.
So he's going to be missed in a variety of ways. Yeah, obviously he moves on, but I think that this organization,
he's actually going back to Buffalo. He's already announced this, and so he's staying in Buffalo.
Okay, so he's going to add more.
He took himself out of the running for the Saints.
Right.
And I believe he also announced that he wasn't going to go to Jacksonville, and then Jacksonville ended up getting Liam Cohen instead. And
well, that's a dumpster fire in the making. I don't even want to go there. Duval. Okay. Anyway, we're going to segue out of that, but I think Joe Brady will do so much more with what the offense will give him, what the team will be drafting. He will be a part of that conversation. Make no mistake about it. And I think that Buffalo is going to find a way to get past this hump they just cannot seem to get over. And by the by, Josh Allen now ranks right up there with Aaron Rodgers, 0-4 in postseason play. So think about that one.
Yeah. Again, they played well this year, but I just didn't see them being a Super Bowl team. And I think that had a lot more to do with the injuries that they had on defense than anything else. That hurt Buffalo. Hurt.
It did. It definitely did. But again, I hate to use this cliche, but it's the next man up. And if you're not ready, if you're not practicing, if you're not a student of the game in the National Football League or in college, as it is in academics, you're going to fail. And it's going to happen every single time. It doesn't matter how great you look in a helmet or how great you look in a uniform. It makes no difference. It doesn't matter.
No, exactly. So our NFL Assistant Coach of the Year for the 2024 season, is it Ben Johnson?
I would say it is. Say it is. Only because he has done a little bit more than Joe Brady, but Joe Brady and him would be a neck and neck. The only reason why I'm taking Ben Johnson over Joe Brady is because there's a monumental task that I think is going to benefit Ben Johnson more in the long run than Joe Brady in the long run. But don't forget, just because he took himself out of this year's coaching cycle, the head coaching cycle, doesn't necessarily mean that's going to happen next year.
Well, no, exactly, right? So our Coach of the Year, Dan Campbell of the Detroit Lions. Yes, Monty, the guy who bites kneecaps and all that fun sort of stuff, is Coach of the Year. Kevin O'Connell from the Vikings, Sean Payton of the Broncos, Dan Quinn of the Commanders, and Andy Reid of the Kansas City Chiefs.
You know what? This is probably the toughest list, and I say that with a heavy heart because as much as I like Andy Reid, I really don't like Andy Reid. And I don't say that because his record is 143-53 career, or the fact that 16-6 postseason, or hasn't already won 2 Super Bowls, or I just think that there was a lot of band-aids put in this Chiefs offense that you had probably never seen before. And because the stars were aligned and everybody, well, I'd say almost everybody had their picks in as the Kansas City Chiefs going on to a potential three-peat against the Eagles, who they've already faced once within the last 3 years, will now face them again. I'm not a huge Andy Reid fan. I never have been. only because he's Andy freaking Reid. I mean, I
And
think nothing away from him.
He was with that team in the other part of the state that you cheer for. So Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, they just don't agree with anything. Bottom line.
Yeah, no, it's either potato or potato, and I think that Kansas City, one of those teams where they almost expect to win, whether or not they show Taylor Swift, which is not football, on TV on more of a regular basis, and I think they should be showing Taylor Swift because this is football and not her Eras tour, which actually ended relatively recently, which is why she's there.
It ended in Vancouver, Canada.
What do you know? Out of all places, Canada, eh?
Vancouver.
In Vancouver. So, Andy Reid, the expected coach of the year, I don't think he'll win it because I don't believe there was enough adversity. I don't think there's enough storyline to put Andy Reid in that conversation of coaches like your Dan Quinn's or your Sean Payton's, who I don't think Sean Payton will actually end up winning it at all. And then you have Kevin O'Connell, who's done great things with Sam Darnold and that Minnesota Vikings offense. And I think that Sam Darnold was finding ghosts all over again as they lost against the Lions. But Dan Campbell, a guy who likes to bite knees and not give them back, could be the Cinderella story of Coach of the Year, only because, he's such a passionate man, former player, great person, has a lot of zest. He has personality. People like him. He, again, likable and likability are great, especially in National Football League. I like Dan Campbell. It's a great story. I don't know that Kevin Connell will win because, again, he's a first-year head coach. He hasn't faced years of adversity there in Minnesota, and it's hard for me to pick him. The only other guy that I think would have a fairy tale story bigger and better than any of them has got to be Dan the Man Quinn himself. And I say that because he went so far, 12-5 with a rookie quarterback named Jaden Daniels, who was just on fire. His QBR was well over 100. He helped this team escalate their mindsets, their attitudes, their play on the field. He's 2-1 in postseason play. This team had not been to any playoff caliber type conversation since 1991. Give that guy a hamburger and send him packing. Dan Quinn is my guy.
Yeah, I've got Quinn as well. He succeeded where I didn't think they would succeed was their offensive line. I was worried for Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels was my number one pick as far as the quarterbacks went last year, way ahead of Caleb Williams, way ahead of Caleb. But again, and then when they lost Cosby in that playoff game before they played the Eagles, that just decimated that offensive line. But these injuries do happen, and again, you need the next man up. The next man up wasn't able to do anything against Philadelphia. But again, what Campbell did, though, was he brought a sense of believability back to the Washington Commanders. As you know, from my days of watching football, it was always the Redskins and the Cowboys. The Redskins and the Cowboys. And yes, I use that Redskins term because that's what they were. And it was always a war between those two cities.
Always a battle of attrition. Always a battle of attrition.
Always, right?
Yep.
And like I said, that year that they had Riggins in Washington, it was just like, oh God, no, this guy's gonna run through us like nobody's business, and he did. And then you had the Art Monks and the Darryl Greens, Darryl Green, Joe Theismann. Theismann was a Notre Dame quarterback who came up here to Canada first and played in the Grey Cup for the Toronto Argonauts, who lost. He lost that game to the Calgary Stampeders, which is just disgusting to somebody. I live in Calgary, but of course I came from Edmonton, which is home of the Eskimos. So, but Thiesman, as Drew Pearson points out, because they were actually high school players together.
Mm-hmm.
They always had that ugly uniform though. That burgundy and gold is just awful. Especially when you compare it to the beautiful star and the aquamarine and all that good stuff that the Cowboys wear. So again,
oh, Greg,
I know. I'm just reminiscing.
there's one more hideous uniform that's more than that, and that belongs to the 1935 Pittsburgh Steelers because they made them look like jailbirds.
Well, yeah, that's true. Well, the Green Bay Packers' original uniform is awful ugly too.
Yeah, that's pretty hideous. You're right.
That is awful. That was ugly. But again, I really have Dan Quinn as my coach of the year as well, simply because of the job that he was able to do, and he turned around that defense as well. He really turned it. I mean, that secondary last year was horrifying. This year, they were all solid. So
they all play their positions efficiently, correctly, on point, whether it was man, whether it was zone, whether it was cover zero, it didn't matter. They played the way Dan wanted to play, and you've seen it on display in Dallas. And once he left, well, what happened to the defense? They fell apart. Why? Because Mike Zimmer, in his infinite wisdom, with the lack of understanding of personnel groupings, didn't know his players, would rather sit inside of a booth and call plays and be on the field to call plays like he used to when he was in Minnesota. So, Mike Zimmer, not a player's coach. Dan Quinn, yes.
Oh, absolutely. So Quinn is easily our NFL coach of the year.
No doubt. Hands down and twice on Sunday.
Let's go to the offensive rookie of the year then.
Offensive rookie of the year. You know, so many guys.
Which we have. Well, we have Brock Bowers, the Las Vegas Raider tight end, who finally took out Mike Ditka's 1961 mark for yardage. Malik Neighbors of the New York Giants, Bo Nix of the Denver Broncos, Brian Thomas Jr. of the Jacksonville Jaguars, and then Jaden Daniels, the Washington Commanders.
This is probably the best offensive rookie of the year list I can probably think of for a lot of reasons. We'd already talked about Jaden Daniels and his performance and how good he's been. He had 25 touchdowns, 9 interceptions in 17 games. 17 games, only 9 interceptions. That's a rookie record. He has done so much with what he has. McLaurin was such a great beneficiary to those throws. He made some spectacular, and I mean spectacular catches, dimes dropped by Jaden Daniels under pressure, knowing he's going to get hit, get through to the ball in a timely fashion. He threw for 3,568 yards. Don't
forget old Zach Ertz, their old tight end who made some very good catches, and he also decided to try to beat up the Philadelphia Eagles, his former team, which I appreciate. He wanted to fight all of them. Okay, right on. I like this.
Guy is spicy. He's spicy.
Bo
Nix came on relatively late. That's the only reason why he's not on my list. His passer rating was good when he started getting good, when he started to understand the system and kind of evolved from being that rookie quarterback with the shiny uniform to getting nicked up a little bit. Hence the word nicks. He got nicked up a little bit on the field, took some grass out of his helmet on a few occasions. He did throw for almost 3,800 yards, almost 30 touchdowns, threw for 12 interceptions in 17 games. So, very reflective of a standard rookie year. I don't think it was absolutely outstanding, but it wasn't bad. It was actually quite good.
He brought the Broncos back into the playoffs. There's nothing
wrong with that. But that was with the help of other teams. They didn't create that path. They were relying on other teams to lose, whereas my team had the ability and blew it, of course. well, we won't even go there. Malik Neighbors for the New York Giants. The guy is a budding star. That offensive line was absolutely atrocious. Quarterback carousel a la carte. I will give credit where credit is due to Drew Lock because he did a lot more with a lot less. He showed what he was capable of doing. He got it done under pressure. He was accurate with the throw. He understands his progressions. He knew where his checkdowns was. He reminds me of what Sam Darnold looked like with the New York Jets when he was drafted in 2018. How far back does that go? Well, Sam Darnold should be comeback player of the year, but he can't be because he didn't stop playing. He just kept playing, but in a lesser role.
But he's eligible for the comeback player of the year this year, believe it or not.
Oh, well, then they actually put that on there then because to me, he is comeback player of the year, but that's another story. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I think that Brian Thomas, Jacksonville Jaguar, had a good season despite how horrible this team was. My gosh. I mean, you couldn't keep the quarterback upright if you had stuck him in the ground with Velcro around his legs. I mean, it was horrible. The offensive line was atrocious. The sacks galore on Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is not the guy they need, not the guy they should have, and find a way to get rid of Trevor Lawrence moving forward. I know that Saad Khan certainly is in dispute of that, obviously, with the mega contract he had given him before the start of this past season. But Thomas Jr., 87 catches, 1,282 yards. I like it. Scored 10 touchdowns in 17 games. Very respectable. Malik Neighbors had a better season despite him being nicked up a little bit, but he picked up where he left off. Now, a guy who maybe doesn't get the glamour, who doesn't get the talk, who doesn't get the conversation. This isn't a parent-teacher conference. And I say that about Brock Bowers, who's an absolute beast all unto his own. He broke records this year with the Las Vegas Raiders. He broke Sam Laporta's record of 86 receptions in 23. He broke Mike Ditka's 1961 record of 1,076 receiving yards as a rookie. He broke Puka Nakua's 2023 record of 105 receptions. Broke Darren Waller's 2020 record of 107 receptions. So if there's anyone, and I see this with the grain of salt that I have probably between my teeth or under my tongue as I'm about to say this, it's got to be Brock Bowers. I love Jaden Daniels. I love the story. It's fabulous. It's wonderful. But it's just not sexy enough. And I think sexiness sells when you're talking about the tight end position from tight ends in the National Football League that get no love. It may be tight end day.
They have their own weekend now. They get plenty of love. That you know this. Come on now.
Yeah, but how many years did they not get it? How many years did they go unnoticed, untalked about? You look at guys like
Jay Novacek for the Cowboys in the 90s was unnoticed because it was always Aikman and and I'm going, huh? Novacek, do you not see this guy blocking for Emmitt Smith? Do you not see him catching the balls from Troy for first downs? I mean, this always bothered me. I agree with you. But again, and then in these poor years that we had Jason Witten, who I'm sorry, he was a good tight end, but he's not God's gift to the position. The guy that, to me, that was the better tight end was Jay Novacek. So there you have it.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. Jay Novacek blocked, and he could block all day long. I mean, you have good blocking tight ends, but then you have great blocking tight ends. And Brock Bowers, as little as this Raiders team had with the decimation at the quarterback position for the Las Vegas Raiders and what he was able to do with every single quarterback that started for this group, able to break multiple records, including the great 85 Bears head coach Mike Ditka's record, says a lot. He deserves the win, and I give him.
I completely agree with you. Even though I had Jaden Daniels as my number one quarterback in the draft last year and all that other stuff, I completely agree with you. Brock Bowers should be the offensive rookie of the year.
He's earned it. He deserves it. He's done a lot more with a lot less because that's what the Raiders continue to give him. And now Whether or not Pete Carroll will give them exactly what they're looking for, that remains to be seen as well. I think a lot can be said, and a lot can be actually not said about Pete Carroll's position now, the new head coach for the Las Vegas Raiders, and whether or not they follow the moniker of a Super Bowl winning quarterback. And by the way, this is the first head coach they've had with a Super Bowl win prior to being a head coach.
Yep.
The only other guy to do this,
never had one.
The only other guy to do this was not a Raiders head coach, but it was a guy who was well respected and does not get enough love, and that is Tom Flores.
Yep.
Love Tom Flores. Tom is the man. Goes into the Hall of Fame.
How many times did we converse every year before he finally got into the Where's Flores? Why isn't he in the Hall of Fame? He deserved it. Bottom line.
Yep. End of story. You're right. You're absolutely right.
But again, they waited way too long. Way too long.
Well, it's one of those Hall of Fame things. We talked about that from the onset of the show. How long did it take for this band or this artist to get in? And it took way too long for them to get in, just like it did for Tom Flores. But I'm glad he's in. Yeah.
We could do a whole discussion of the players and our coaches that also still need to be into the Pro Football. LC Greenwood for the Steelers is not in the Pro Football. How in the world is LC Greenwood not in the Hall of Fame? Same thing applies to Darren Woodson for the Cowboys. Hello, the man was he was phenomenal, and he won Super Bowl.
Have a conversation about Andy Russell too.
Yeah. Bingo.
The late Andy Russell. I had a chance to interview him years ago. Andy Russell is a guy who I stated was a Hall of Fame player. I mean, he wasn't in the Hall of Fame yet, but deserves to be in the Hall of Fame posthumously. How long will that take? I don't know. I don't have enough breath to hold on that one, but I hope he gets in one day.
Oh, absolutely. But again, we could go on and on about these players and coaches. It's so awful. It is so awful how they waited for Chuck Howley, who was the defensive player for the Cowboys. He was a linebacker for the Cowboys, who won the Super Bowl MVP award on a losing team, 16-13. He won the MVP award, and the man had Alzheimer's by the time they put him in. It's just so disgusting.
Yeah, when you wait too long, you lose what you have, and you can't afford to do that. No, not at all. So
it is disgusting. So our offensive player of the year. We have Saquon Barkley, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Derrick Henry, and Lamar Jackson. So this almost is the it's got 3 of the 5 MVP award candidates as well. But who do you think becomes the offensive player of the year?
That's going to be tough. I like Saquon. I have always liked Saquon, but a bigger story is whether or not Saquon will shine in the Super Bowl forthcoming against the Kansas City Chiefs. That remains to be seen. This is his first Super Bowl after all, so this could be, obviously it's very special for him, but it could be very special for those that are Saquon Barkley fans coming out of Penn State. Clearly, the Giants didn't know what they were doing in their infinite wisdom or lack thereof and decided not to keep him, not to build around a guy like Saquon Barkley. But look what he's done in the Philadelphia Eagles uniform, 2,005 yards, 15 touchdowns in 16 games in 2024 with 345 carries. That, speaking of carries, that carries a lot of weight. He is the number one, I would say, top of the list guy in running back lore who wasn't able to do this with a team that obviously ill-prepared enough to help him get to that point of where he's going to in Super Bowl 58. And with that, I like Saquon. I like his energy. I love that backwards jump / whatever, hop, whatever you want to call that. He just looked absolutely phenomenal, and he did that with the swiftness It was a fly Eagles fly moment for him. I think that solidified him being the number one running back in franchise history, and he surpassed Gerald McCoy on that list on his way to over 2,000 yards, which obviously breaks records, and we know whose record he broke. But that's Eric Dickerson. Interesting. I like Derrick Henry. It's just the system in Baltimore did not allow for him to flourish early and often. They didn't hand the ball off to him when they should have. They didn't utilize him correctly as they should have.
In the fourth quarter, when he wasn't touching the football in the fourth quarters. I know he is a finisher. Did you not watch his career in Tennessee, guys? Did you not watch this guy finish teams off? And I mean, he would go for 11 and 14 yards. He would carry guys on his back. He finished games. But no, they didn't use him in the fourth quarter.
He was a finisher, and with more hits and more punches and more beatdowns, the better he got, the harder he ran, the more he ran through people, through walls, through fences, through cars. So you threw anything in his way. The kitchen sink couldn't stop this guy. He just got better and better every single time he touched the ball, and it was prevalent and noticed throughout the entire season whenever that ball was in his hands. Now, staying in the AFC North, obviously, perhaps Joe Burrow is a guy that people want to give it to. And because his team was horrible, defense was horrible, a very disappointing season, I must say. And one of the guys who was the shining star, whether or not T. Higgins stays with the Bengals, whether they sign him to an extension or give him a new contract, that remains to be seen. But I like Jamar Chase from the sense of his ability, and the best ability is availability, and that's what he brings. That's what he brought all season long at 127 catches, 1,708 yards, 17 touchdowns in 17 games. He didn't miss a game. He didn't miss a game. Touchdowns, 17 games. So a lot to be said for Jamar Chase, but a lot to be said for his, quarterback in Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow was faced with an offensive line that was unsure of itself at times, who allowed pressure in the backfield more times than he would like, hit the ground more times than he would like, but he had 43 touchdowns, only 9 interceptions, and his QBR was better than Jaden Daniels. But again, Jaden's a rookie, and Joe Burrow is not. He's already been to a Super Bowl, didn't win. Nobody remembers number 2 unless you flush it. But Joe Burrow, in his infinite wisdom, at 108.5 QBR, almost 5,000 yards, 43 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, as I said, in 17 games, he didn't miss a start. The guy is like a clock that keeps ticking, and he just keeps beating like a heartbeat. It's a great story. I love Joe Burrow. He's a great guy. He's cool under duress. That's why I used to call him Joe Cool, especially leading into the Super Bowl where they eventually lost against the Rams at SoFi just a couple of years ago. And it's hard for me to pick a guy because I know that the other guy, the other side of that coin, who should be on that list and ends up actually falling on this list, is Lamar Jackson. He's a great guy. I love the fact that he bet on himself. He's an absolute stud. He's humble. He's nice. I interviewed him in 2018. The guy knows what he's doing. His QBR was the highest at almost 120.1, 4,000 yards, 41 touchdowns, but 4 interceptions in 17 games. So he is the highlight reel. Should he win MVP in the NFL? I don't know. It's close. I like the AFC North matchup between, if there was a pairing of Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow, and there was like a hybrid moment, I'd be hard pressed to stay with Lamar Jackson for the MVP, to be perfectly honest with you. But I got to give it to Joe Burrow. I have to. The story is too good. The fact alone that he's had to deal with so much adversity, he's had to deal with a team who failed on him more times than he would like, but did a lot more with a lot less. And despite having Jamar Chase, the go-to, the vision, the ability to navigate that ball downfield, to find an open spot, and just playing around a bunch of I don't know. I don't want to say land of misfit toys, but what he played with were guys that were just not ready, just not ready.
Yeah.
And I think that Joe Burrow ends up winning this just slightly an edge to Lamar Jackson. Again, I love Lamar Jackson. He's a great guy. He went much farther. It wasn't for that drop by Mark Andrews in the end zone, which I'm sure he's still beating himself up to this very minute, probably dreaming about how he could have made that catch. Lamar Jackson would be playing in the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, it wasn't the game winner that Lamar Jackson was able to get to Mark Andrews. And for that reason and that reason only, I'm picking Joe Burrow.
And Joe Cardozo, the owner of Team MBS Media, will love you for this. And he'll love me as well because I agree the Offensive Player of the Year is Joe Burrow. Boom.
Well, fair enough. You're welcome, Joe.
That's right. That's right. Wherever you are, Joe, you got us. You got both of us here.
You're welcome.
So let's go to the Defensive Player of the Year for the rookies.
Defensive Player of the Year.
I have Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Okay.
Chop Robinson from the Miami Dolphins. And then Braden Fisk and Jared Verse from the Los Angeles Rams. So those are the 5 nominees.
I have Fisk and Verse. I have Chop Robinson. I have Quinyon Mitchell. Cooper DeJean is an absolute stud. Gosh, this is tough. I've watched all these guys.
This one is going to. I'm going to make this very quick and simple for you because in my last NFL mock draft last year, which of course a mock draft, as you know, turns into a nightmare because of the trades and all that stuff that goes on.
Sure.
But the number one defensive edge player in my class last year was not Latu. It was Jared Verse of the Rams. And you saw the numbers that man put up. It's Verse for me. So you can argue amongst the rest.
I like Jared Verse. No, and you don't.
I had him going to the Rams in that mock draft. I had it nailed. That was the one guy I got completely correct.
If nothing else, he had an absolutely fabulous season. 30 assists, 4.5 sacks, 2 fumbles, and two fumble recoveries last season, 17 games. He has played lights out. People may be questioning Aaron Donald who? No, okay. Everybody knows who Aaron Donald is. There's no question about who Aaron Donald is. He played for Pitt. He went on to play for the Los Angeles Rams. And they ended up winning a Super Bowl because he was a freaking beast. Now, if you melded both Fisk and Verse together, you would get Sam. You would get Aaron Donald. I want to see Sam Darnold, but I skipped Aaron Donald. Same. I didn't say Ronald McDonald. We're good. I like Fisk in this, but I like Verse more because he's very diverse. His ability, his swim moves, his vision. His ability to go low when he needs to, great hand-eye coordination, his work ethic, what he does off the field during the offseason. He's going to find out what he can do to get better, as most players do. Obviously, there's a method to the madness to try to determine what is going to be your next move. What can you put in your arsenal? What can you learn from a former great defensive pass rusher? What can you do as an outside linebacker to make yourself that much more valuable to the team that you're on? I think Jared Verse certainly has the edge here. Quinyon Mitchell, I love Cooper DeJean though. Cooper DeJean, he's a solo artist. Solo tackle artist. He had 13 assists. He had almost like a basketball ranking. He's had a half sack, 3 fumble recoveries in 16 games in 24. If there was a great number 2, it would be Cooper DeJean. But
if you watched us last year on NFL Draft Central,
I did,
and you saw my reaction to the Quinyon Mitchell going to the Eagles, and then Cooper DeJean also going to, and I'm just like, oh no. oh no, Howie Roseman is doing this to me again. It was just a nightmare, right? And of course, Jeff Barnes and I were both adamant that Cooper DeJean would be a corner in the NFL. He was not going to be a safety like everybody said he was. He is a corner. And yes, he's a white man who plays corner in the NFL, kids. You better get used to this.
You're going to see a lot more of it, especially in the upcoming draft. But I'm going with Jared Verse here too. I mean, he had a very trainable, very focused, hardworking. His ethic is bar none some of the best in the National Football League. And I think that's one of the determining factors that you've seen as he came out of college by ownership of the Rams to say, this guy is a workhorse. He knows what he needs to do. Very coachable, likable, 2 forced fumbles, 2 fumble returns. The guy is by far, and you know what, I'll give props to Chop Robinson, but he just did not have the kind of season and the impact, literally and figuratively, that Jared Verse has. Fisk has a little way to go. I'll be honest with you.
But a defensive tackle takes 3 years to develop. They're very much like your offensive lineman. It takes them 3 years to get developed in the NFL. This is why I hated the Cowboys starting Tyler Guyton this year, and it was just a nightmare. Yes. But again, you know, that's how they approached it, which was ridiculous in my mind, because the kid was a right tackle for Oklahoma. He played left tackle at TCU previously, but very little. Well, you don't put a kid like that out at left tackle. What happened when they put Tyler Smith out at left tackle? It was penalty after penalty. Oh, and now he's a left guard where he always belonged, which is what Jeff and I also said at Draft Central that year as well. But again,
natural positions will play a very big role in where these guys fit in any given scheme. When you're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, and you're a guy that's not meshed with that system because they're drafting you into free safety and you're actually a cornerback, those positions are they're in the secondary, yes, but they're not the same. They're not the same.
A cornerback doesn't keep his head on what a quarterback is doing.
Right.
That's the huge difference. A safety sees what a quarterback is doing. A safety will see what a quarterback is doing.
Right.
The corners, and now in this league especially, I mean, with the speed that you're dealing with and all that, I mean, being a corner right now is just a nightmare. Ask Sauce Gardner of the New York Jets, because I mean, he got burned this year. That man had never been burned at Cincinnati or in his first season, but man, in year 2, he got beat up.
Well, the reason why is because this is a copycat league. People are going to look at your film and find out what you're good at and find out what you're not good at and expose you on what you're not good at. And then you're going to be shaking your head thinking, okay, I guess we set them up for failure. And again, one of those things where you can't get cocky. And I interviewed Sauce Gardner when he was drafted in Vegas in 22. And I thought to myself, man, he's going to be a surprise. He's going to be a problem. But then I thought to myself, well, if teams do their homework like they should in the offseason, what's going to happen? He's going to get burned more often than not in the second year. That's exactly what happened. Only because this is a copycat league. This is a what have you done for me lately league. And unless you're refining your craft and find ways to be that much better, that much more dynamic, stay available, stay healthy, and perform different types of exercise routines in the off season, that will be to your benefit and ultimately be more of a benefit to your team than you know.
Exactly. And again, this goes to me, what is hurting the NFL is this constant exercise routine that these players have. You don't need to be in the gym all the time, kids. No. Go out, go run cross country. Go do something for your cardiovascular system. Don't just hit those weights and think that that's great. And these teams who insist on the players being in the weight room just drives me bananas. It drives me nuts.
You have to validate who you are in doing different types of things. The great Troy Polamalu studied yoga.
Yeah.
One of the most limber, non-injured guys you will find during the heyday in the National Football League. Follow that logic, and that will get you to a lot more reps, a lot more time on the field because you're not injured.
Yep, exactly right. So let's go to the defensive player of the year now, Rudy. We have Zach Bond, the Philadelphia Eagles, Trey Hendrickson, the Cincinnati Bengals, Patrick Surtain II of the Denver Broncos, Zach Bond, the great free agent signing by the Eagles, and there's a guy that you're familiar with who of course I wanted to become a Cowboy, but they chose Taco Charlton instead. T.J. Watt of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
You know, you can't forget Myles Garrett. He has done so much for this team. He has 40 solo tackles, 7 assists, 14 sacks, 1 fumble recovery in 70 games. Did not miss a beat. He had more solo tackles than T.J. Watt. But interestingly enough, these guys are 1-2 punches when it comes to defensive players of the year. Why? Because they spend their time wisely. We're just talking about off-field exercises, off-field routines, things that they do on a regular basis, and that is the grind for them in the offseason to be ready for the regular season, to be ready for training camp, to showcase what they're intending on bringing during any regular season / postseason run. Myles Garrett, just an absolute beast. Did TJ Watt get robbed last year of being Defensive Player of the Year? Absolutely. He should have won that twice, back to back. But in the infinite wisdom of voters and or whoever makes up these things, decided to make Myles Garrett the guy instead of TJ Watt, the reigning Defensive Player of the Year. Now, with that being said, Trey Hendrickson, great story. 33 solo tackles, 13 assists, and almost 18 sacks in 17 games. He pressured a very weak offensive line in Pittsburgh. Doesn't surprise me he got to Russell Wilson as often as he did, so that doesn't do anything for me. It's a great story. I like his story. Basically came from nothing. He's had 2 forced fumbles as well. Good stuff, not great stuff, not consistent enough. So he did it 1 year. That does not make him Defensive Player of the Year. I'm sorry. But when you look at someone who has the consistency, as you aforementioned, but didn't quite say his name, in TJ Watt, 40 solo tackles, 21 assists, 11.5 sacks, 2 fumble recoveries in 17 games. But the way he does that, how he does that, in the ways that makes him an impact player you have to watch for and double, and that you've seen more doubles on TJ Watt than anybody else in that defensive line. All due respect to Cam Hayward, and I love Cam. I love interviewing him in Arizona when the Eagles played the Bengals for the first time, or Nick
Herbig,
or Nick Herbig for that matter. I'm a Pittsburgh guy. You're asking me the wrong person.
I know. I know. And I understand that you're the Steel Curtain fan and all that other jazz, and we've discussed our 3 Super Bowl meetings, which I only like the first one, or the last one, pardon me, Super Bowl 30.
Yeah, well, most people don't. Most people don't recall that one. But Zach Bond is a guy that I really like, but because this is a regular season MVP, he doesn't make my list. But he did, in all due credit, 93 solo tackles, 58 assists, 3.5 sacks, 1 fumble recovery, and 1 interception. So a feather in his hat with the interception, but he doesn't make the list because he's an active player on an active team in the Super Bowl. Patrick Surtain, interesting guy. He did a lot of great things this past season. Not extremely notable. He did play in 16 games. He had 4 interceptions. Splash player, and I seen him catch many balls thrown his way that weren't actually designed to be in his way, but he cut the route, he jumped the route, he forced the turnover, and he did an absolutely fantastic job. But again, one of those 1-year wonder guys. I'm not going to say that Patrick Surtain is not a consistent player. No, what I'm saying is that when it comes to being the consistent defensive player, he's not that guy. And that's where you get Myles Garrett and TJ Watt being those aforementioned guys. I'm picking TJ Watt for a lot of reasons. I'm picking TJ Watt because a lot of his guys on the defensive line were injured. He had to carry the load. He was double teamed, and teams got wise to his efforts, his tasks, his his weapons of choice, his swim moves, his power move, going low, going high. He faced a lot more adversity with a team that seemed to be going in the right direction and then losing 5 straight games. And every game, every one of them had to have him involved in order to keep the field and the positioning on the field favorable for the offense. Whereas, Garrett, I mean, my gosh, this was a dumpster fire for the Cleveland Browns for the most part. Didn't know who the quarterback was going to start. Oh, and mark my words, I see a Russell Wilson in their future sometime soon with Deshaun Watson re-rupturing his ACL. Just saying. So if that happens, don't be too surprised. Myles Garrett, good story. Not enough to turn my vote. And I think TJ Watt deserves this Defensive Player of the Year based on all the aforementioned things. And the fact alone that I've still yet to interview TJ Watt, but I did interview his counterpart in Cam Hayward, and Cam had nothing but fantastic things to say about his cohort.
Yeah. I tend to agree with you on this, as much as it pains me, because again, the Cowboys should have had TJ Watt. It was no.
I don't have any tissue for you. Sorry.
And we went to this guy from that school up north, which I can't stomach. You know that place. and no. But anyhow, yes, TJ Watt is my Defensive Player of the Year as well. So now we're going to go to the MVP for the 2024 NFL season, Rudy.
Oh man, last but not least, this is tough. This is the creme de la creme. This is for all the
marbles, right?
My gosh, if we were playing Jackson Stars, you probably would have won already.
So we have Jared Goff of the Detroit Lions, Joe Burrow of the Cincinnati Bengals, Lamar Jackson, the 2-time defending MVP, Josh Allen, and Saquon Barkley.
Oh, I could readjust myself for this. Okay, so I think to myself, this could be a very close knitted, probably the tightest MVP race within the last 5 years. And here's why. Saquon Barkley, first running back, not the first running back, but this year a running back who solidified his position by performing feats of complete acrobatic motion on the field. Hard to tackle, hard to bring down, high IQ player. It resonates with everything that he does. His talent is bar none some of the best in the National Football League in his respective position. 345 carries, 2,005 yards. Sorry, Eric Dickerson. 15 touchdowns, 16 games in 2024. He has done some great motions on the field, turning his hips, swiveling his body, cutting through A-gaps like it's a hot knife through butter. He did absolutely everything that he needed to do. How he needed to do it was just the way Saquon did it. He did it in New York. They were fools to let him go, and now he's making them pay. But because there are quarterbacks on this list, and you know quarterbacks will end up getting an MVP over a running back, sadly, Saquon is not on that list. Sorry, Saquon.
Name me the last running back that won the regular season MVP award and the Super Bowl MVP award in the same season.
Oh my gosh, you're stumping me.
Emmitt Smith.
Emmitt Smith, that's right. It was a Cowboy in my mind, but I didn't know which Cowboy it was for a running back.
It could have been Tony Dorsett, but he didn't win the regular season MVP award.
That's correct. That was the guy I was thinking of, and no, he did not win a regular season MVP. But you're absolutely right. Jared Goff, a guy that basically got kicked out of the LA Rams with a very big boot, very, very fast, with a team that was basically in the dump. They had a horrible first season. He was their quarterback for them. First time he's been on this list, by the way, for those that don't know. He had a pass rating of 111.8, 4,629 yards. My gosh, 37 touchdowns, 12 interceptions in 17 games in 2024. His story is not that good. It's good, but it's not MVP good. When I say MVP good, I mean it has to have adversity. It has to have trials and tribulations. It has to be injury riddled type of context surrounding him missing 2 games, 3 games. It's been fluid for him. It's been absolutely fabulous thanks to Ben Johnson. And the fact alone that he is able to basically reach a second spot in an NFC championship game, which I already had pegged to be an NFC championship game this year. And I said that last year. So the next step for them is the Super Bowl, hopefully for their city, for Dan Campbell, for Jared Goff. I will say Jared Goff does not make this list. Again, one of those things where one of these quarterbacks that do not get on the MVP list, he's on it because of his numbers. I get it. I totally understand it. But the amount of adversities he's had to face as a quarterback with missing wide receiving weapons that otherwise would have been so super beneficial for him, it's just not that great of a story. Great guy, great team. The city loves him and Dan Campbell, even though they're trying to fight a way to send kneecaps back to their residents that Dan Campbell's team ripped off. But, it's a great story. I like it. It's good, but it's not MVP caliber good. We already talked about Joe Burrow at length.
Which is why we both decided to give him the Offensive Player of the Year instead of this one. That's
exactly right. That's exactly right. I don't really need to say anything more about Joe Burrow other than the fact alone that he is a stud. If I didn't say it then, I'm saying it now. But again, he won the other award. You don't win 2 awards. This is not an awards show. So he doesn't win. He doesn't win this MVP award because he already won the other award. The only other 2 guys, and I said this on the preface of saying that both these 2 quarterbacks that I'm about to mention deserve to be in an AFC championship game, but one was not and one was. And when you look at Lamar Jackson, you look at what he's done, his season has absolutely been nothing but phenomenal. Did he have all the weapons? No, not necessarily. They were missing a wide receiver, and he was injured. Mark Andrews was injured for a good part of it. He came back, and then you see what happened against the Bills. But one thing about Lamar Jackson, very resilient. He was very happy despite being beaten. The turnovers by Lamar Jackson, very uncharacteristic. They played down to Pittsburgh during the regular season. They didn't play down to them, knocking them out of the playoffs. I can tell you that right now. They lit up the Steelers in every single statistical category known to mankind. And of course, we're talking about the NFL, which is part of the mankind component. Lamar Jackson just had a great story, but I don't know that it's good enough. It's on the cusp of being great, but not there yet. However, the aforementioned guy, who, by the way, lives only an hour away from where I live in California, Central Valley, and that's Josh Allen. And I say that because Josh Allen grew up in my eyes. He grew up from offensive play calling. He grew up from situational football where he knows when to throw it, knows when to hold it, and knows when to wait. Sounds too much like a country song. But he knew he knew what he needed to do, and he got it done. Unfortunately for them, they weren't able to get it done. He was under duress during the latter parts of that game against the aforementioned Lamar Jackson-led Baltimore Ravens. Good story. He grew up, to me, and his numbers, 101.4 passer rating, 3,731 yards. He did more with less. Lamar Jackson did less with more. So for that reason and that reason only, Josh Allen will end up winning the NFL's MVP for the first time, while Lamar Jackson already has 2. He won't be missing a 3rd. But I guarantee you this, Greg, and I'm going to say this on the record. Lamar Jackson would give up both MVP awards for a Super Bowl ring.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So this is where we come to a disagreement, however, because Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, I've seen this story before. I've seen both of these guys play their games, right? Yes, and we said earlier when we were
The
talking about
Manning and Brady conversation.
when we talked about the Bills with Joe Brady and his effect on Josh Allen, which was superb. That's great. But Saquon Barkley transformed an Eagles offense from last year, which they suffered. I mean, huge. We saw them go downhill, blah, blah, blah. That didn't happen this year. Saquon Barkley received the football. He caught the football. He was scoring enough touchdowns. He also set up Jalen Hurts on those 14 different tush pushes. All of them, as a matter of fact, were tackles at the 1 yard line. Mm-hmm. So again,
a lot of tush.
Saquon Barkley is my MVP this year. He's my MVP.
You know what? You have a great argument there, and I'll say that on the premise that Saquon Barkley basically transformed his team from being mediocre in the running game, not being explosive in the running game, being relatively meek in the running game, and had to use RBs by committee. And instead of being the running team that they should have been against the Chiefs in their first matchup in Arizona, he has now helped put them in a position, rather, for lack of a better term, to basically be a much better match for Kansas City. Not that I'm going to pick my Super Bowl matches here. I had already done that. But I will say that it's a very close 1-2-3 punch between Jackson, Allen, and Saquon.
Yeah.
And I know this is a quarterback-driven league. I get it. They're the highest paid guys in the league. I understand that. But Saquon Barkley would have been a close 3 for me. I like Lamar Jackson. I understand his playmaking capabilities. When you talk about mistakes and being able to capitalize on those mistakes, the Bills capitalize on the mistakes that the Ravens gave them. So when you can capitalize on those mistakes, and again, it goes back to whoever makes the least amount of mistakes is the team that's going to win 9 times out of 10, if not 10 out of 10. Saquon Barkley basically made almost no mistakes. Maybe I think he fumbled once, if I'm not mistaken.
One fumble this season, one.
But that's it. Outside of that, he's been an absolute juggernaut.
Inconsequential, really.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
in the grander scheme of things, my question is whether or not that running game will be put on display in full glory against a very aggressive, more consistent, better led Chris Jones defense with a better supporting cast, in my opinion, this season than any prior season where they won Super Bowls. That's what I want to see. How will they expose the Kansas City Chiefs?
This is why the Cowboys won 3 Super Bowls in the 90s, Rudy, was because they had the Great Wall up front. The Philadelphia Eagles offensive line attacks the same way that the Great Wall used to do. Why do I say they attack? Because they love to run block. They love to attack the defensive player. They don't want to sit back and pass pro. They don't. They beat up a team on the front and in the second level. They beat you up.
Right.
And that's why Saquon Barkley is my MVP as well, because, I mean, that guy, he causes defensive players to overplay him. He makes a cut here. He'll jump over the guys, as we all know, and all that jazz. But my pick for the Super Bowl is the Philadelphia Eagles. If you recall, 2 seasons ago when they played Kansas City, I said Kansas City 38-35 over the Eagles. I was correct, and that was immediately after the 2 teams were determined. I was out there tweeting away, 38-35 Kansas City Chiefs, done. I was correct. This time, I actually had the Philadelphia Eagles winning the Super Bowl by a score of 42-31.
I picked opposite this year, and I don't say that because my twin brother's a huge Kansas City fan, and that would probably be minimizing his fandom, because there's no way he would be able to do what I do. With that, he obviously going to pick the Chiefs. I'm picking the Chiefs, not because I want to pick the Chiefs, but because I think that their ability and Andy Reid's ability on the offensive line to see what cards the Eagles are going to be holding up in a glimpse, in a moment, will be able to change that dynamic very quickly and to become opportunistic on the offensive side of the ball. As far as Spagnuolo's concerned and what he's done defensively, they didn't start out great, but again, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And they're going to finish this off. I don't know about getting pressures and sacks, and of course they're going to get pressures, but are they going to get any sacks? I think maybe one. But when you look at the totality of this matchup, it favors the Eagles just slightly, only because they've already been able to look at what mistakes they made the last time they faced them. This is a rematch, and because of that, I think the Eagles. I was on the Eagles the last time they made it. Everybody I interviewed, from Brian Baldinger to Jim Everett to people in the media, were all on board with the Eagles, and everybody lost. I'm picking the Chiefs because I believe they just have that much more of an edge, a quarterback edge for one, from a quarterback that's already won two. They have Xavier Worthy. They have D-Hop. They have a variety of looks they can give you offensively as well as they can defensively. Justin Reed's been great in the secondary this past season, as we know, for the Kansas City Chiefs. I just think this is a much better and improved Kansas City secondary than we've seen even against the Eagles in their first matchup. So I'm picking the Kansas City Chiefs to win this. It's not going to be as high scoring as people think it's going to be. I don't even think it's going to hit the 30s. It may hit it's going to hit the upper, maybe I'd say the upper teens to mid 20s, but not in the 30s.
Yeah. I picked the Eagles because I said at the beginning of the year on the Team MBS preview shows that the Kansas City Chiefs would not win a third Super Bowl in a row. So I'm sticking to my guns, even though I had the Detroit Lions actually beating the Kansas City Chiefs, which, of course, did not turn out that way.
Funny how that works out, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So I have to stick with the NFC East team. It pains me. It is painful. Even though, I've always said, and I tell all the Philadelphia Eagles fans who follow me on Twitter, and I've been there. I've been to the Link. I've been to Veteran Stadium to see the Eagles play the Cowboys, and I never once had a bad fan around me. Now at Veteran Stadium, I did see the cops taking people off to the jail. That was evident. But again, I never had a bad experience in Philadelphia, unlike in the nation's capital. Which again goes back to my absolute pure hatred for, the Washington team.
Not the Commanders.
That's right. They're not the Commanders. That's it exactly.
Yeah. The non-Commanders got it.
So what other things are you doing these days, Rudy?
Well, there's a variety of things. I'm still collecting vinyl and trying to find some hidden gems out there. I like to dabble in some of that every once in a while. I'm still reporting, still talking about news, and you guys can. I'm revamping my show for this year, for 2025, and see what awaits. So everybody needs to tune in on that one. That's the RudeDogShow.com. Don't forget to follow at Rude Dog Reyes on X. Formerly known as Twitter. You guys would probably see that on my profile, a little redundancy, but that's okay. It's designed to show you that I'm serious about followers. You can always go on YouTube and subscribe. Please like and share. I really appreciate it. And Greg, thank you so much for having me on, man. It's been an absolute blast. I love it. Can't wait to do it again.
Well, I kept you to myself because, of course, you would always be on with Jeff and Bill and myself, or with Monty and somebody. And I just said, no, tonight it's going to be all Rudy.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Craig. I think it's a strange affinity for Rush that we have. That
doesn't hurt either, right? I mean,
no, the best thing that
or our other stream that we talked about the other night about the Beatles and all that good sort of stuff as well. Because
Right. Yeah.
I of course am also an LFC Reds fan, so that that the going to see the Cavern Club and all that jazz when I first went over to England. I was in London, right? I saw Westminster Abbey, the Parliament, and all that, Big Ben, all that jazz. I got onto a train as quick as I could to Liverpool because I had to go to Anfield, right?
You got to go, man. You got to go.
And I got to sing "You'll Never Walk Alone," and it was just heaven, right? That's
got to go to Abbey Road.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, Abbey Road as well. So that was my big trip in 1986 because I'd been with the Marines at that time, and of course we deal with the Royal Marines. So I was already there on an exercise, but I took an extra week before I came back home.
Good for you, man.
Just to go to Liverpool, and I loved it. I mean, I even saw that Everton Stadium, which is very close to Anfield as well. They're just across the park, right?
Right.
So I even saw those clowns over there, and no. I'm a Liverpool Red, man. That was it, baby.
That's it.
And to see them in first place in the EPL again this year is heaven to me. Just heaven. So
well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Maybe one day I'll get there.
If you've never been to England to see an EPL game, because the other place I went to when I came back to London was Tottenham.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw a Hotspurs game as well.
Nice.
And that was a fantastic experience too. And Marina Sirtis, of course, from the Star Trek Next Generation, is a huge Tottenham Hotspurs fan. She has the Tottenham Hotspur on her shoulder as a tattoo. But she loves it.
She shares it, I'm sure, freely.
When she's at the
on display.
She's the queen of the Comic Cons, right? She's always there. Well, yes. until recently, because of course she no longer comes to the United States thanks to certain other situations. But the Star Trek fandom in me, and so that's where I decided to go to see Tottenham as well.
Nice, very cool.
Yeah,
very cool, Greg. Hey, it's been fabulous, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
It's been great. I appreciate you coming on. And I will stay in touch with you, sir. You
Sounds
take
good.
care.
You as well. Thanks, Greg.
All right.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Appreciate it. Make sure you share and like this as well. It's always good stuff.
Excellent.